Welcome back for another helping of oysters, clams, and clickers presented by Bolin Media. I am Ross Bolin here with Mr. Barrett Dudley. And Barrett, unfortunately, we are out of facial tissues here at Bolin Media because I just used the rest of them rewatching the episode and writing our rundown. So if we cry during the show today, we're just going to have to use toilet paper.
Okay, all right. That makes sense. That's okay. I get it. I will say, though, I love this episode. Let me just start off by saying that.
But you didn't weep?
But I did not weep. I didn't weep. I did not cry. This did not make me cry. I thought it was, I thought it was poignant and very sweet, but I didn't find it to be tear-jerking.
You soulless bastard.
Yeah.
You sociopathic monster. How could you not cry?
You know?
I mean, so far, every person who's told me that they didn't cry during this, I do judge slightly.
Okay.
So I have to do the same to you.
Can I ask you when exactly you cried?
We'll get to it.
Okay.
How about that? I'll tell you when I broke.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I was inconsolable for pretty much the rest of the episode at my breaking point. But we are here today, of course, to digest episode 3 of HBO's The Last of Us, titled Long, Long Time, written by Craig Mazin and directed by Peter Hoare. H-O-A-R? Hoare? I don't know.
No, I think you mean hooah.
Hooah! As Ralphie says it on The Sopranos.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks now, I have argued that the show needn't stray from the video game because the incredible storytelling is already there. And after episode 3, I am now arguing that Craig Mazin should be writing every single episode because that was one of the most powerful stories I have ever seen told through one episode of television. But let's get into it. First of all, thankfully, no cold open this week. They knew none of us would be able to handle any additional emotional suffering.
Well, this episode is a bottle episode.
Yes.
It sort of acts as an hour and 20-minute cold open.
Yeah.
For me, it kind of did the same thing that the cold opens were doing. It investigated...
Destroy you?
No, it investigated a smaller slice of what had been going on. Even though it was connected to more directly to our Joel and Ellie, kind of, to our main... task-oriented, goal-oriented storyline, is tangential to that and cross paths with that one. But it was like, it took us to it. It showed us something different that was very important to our larger understanding of this world as a whole. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think it took the cold opens were far more global, in their subject matter, and this one was extremely, this one was micro focused on one particular storyline. But I think that's why we didn't have a cold open here is because this was a bottle episode that was, it had its whole message in one extended story.
You're right, and I think it did accomplish the same things that the cold opens had for us. We open with Joel stacking rocks down by the river 10 miles west of Boston.
I thought the rock stacking I thought was interesting.
Yeah, when I rewatched it, I was like, what am I supposed to be taking from this?
Well, what do you know about rock stacking, Ross?
That it's a time-passing task down by the river?
Okay. But when I think of it, I think of some very specific people that are all about the balance that can be brought from imbalance, right? From imperfections. And there's I'll just say this. Most of the people that I know that would be stacking rocks as a time-passing activity, like you mentioned, probably also interested in things like nootropics.
Yeah, sure.
And maybe a little microdosing.
I thought you were going to talk about...
Maybe going on a little ayahuasca journey.
Right.
Doing a little... Maybe doing
mindfulness.
Maybe going to Burning Man.
Sure.
Yeah, that's everything. That's who likes rock stacking.
I thought you were going to go in the direction of the aliens and Stonehenge.
No, so I thought it was just... it was peculiar to me to see Joel just sitting down there making a little rock stack, finding a little harmony in nature, because he just doesn't seem like the type.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head, though. He's thinking shit through. He's processing the death of Tess, right, by stacking rocks.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Second question here about this scene. Sorry, I'm going off on a lot of tangents right away here. I have thoughts.
It's going to be a long one.
This was supposedly 10 miles west of Boston.
Yeah.
I need my Boston peeps to get at us because I don't think anything looks like this 10 miles west of Boston.
I actually saw some people on Twitter bitching like,
There's just like a massive forest and a river 10 miles west of Boston.
I saw a guy say, I live 10 miles west of Boston and these mountains are ruining my life because he doesn't have that level of nature out there, I don't think.
Yeah. And I don't know if that was supposed to be like a little like, this is what has happened in 20 years.
Mountains sprung up from the ground.
Just sprung up. There was a massive fault line that just, moved really quickly in a 20-year span. But yeah, it was like, I think it's pretty well known that this was mostly shot in Canada. And I was like, that's Canada.
Yeah.
That looks like Canada.
Honestly, as somebody who hasn't spent much time in the Northeast, I didn't care at all. But when I saw people on Twitter that are apparently near Boston, and in one case, actually 10 miles west of it, I was kind of taken aback by the differentiation there.
Yeah. Okay, we can continue.
Yeah, but Joel is clearly holding Ellie responsible on some level for Tess's death, and he can barely look at her. And Ellie, who has never been in the woods before and is surprised by the surplus of bugs, reasons with Joel that Tess and him made a choice to do all of this, and she says, so don't blame me for something that isn't my fault.
Yeah, really nice character development on Ellie here because, again, this is one of the things, and they play it really well with the writing and the dialogue, right? That like Joel kind of jumps the gun and says, I don't want your sorries, expecting
that's what she's going for.
The normal kind of response where like this young person would feel guilty about what had happened.
And responsible, yeah.
And responsible for it. And he's like anticipating that, like you said, kind of expecting it because he does personally blame Ellie for this. He's on this mission on behalf of Ellie and one thing led to another. And Ellie is already like mature enough essentially and world-wise enough to not buy into that bullshit. She's very comfortable knowing that this was not her fault.
Yeah, it's like in Saving Private Ryan, how they all blame Private Ryan when they find him, and he's like, hey, I didn't pick this.
Yeah.
But they've got a 5-hour hike to Bill and Frank's place, which is where we assume they're going, of course, based on the ending of last episode. And Joel has taken this hike many times, says he rarely sees infected on the route, but is on the lookout for people. And Ellie asks if Bill and Frank are nice, and Joel says Frank is. Then Ellie asks Joel about the scar on his head, which he explains he received when someone shot at him and missed. And I thought this was really interesting because she asks if he shot back and got him. And Joel says, no, I missed too. It happens more often than you would think. And I thought this whole conversation was just a continuation of what we saw last episode, that not everyone in the world is a marksman shooter, right? Who can just bring down infected or unsick humans, I guess, with one shot from a pistol or whatever. Which is, like Barrett touched on last week, the thing about the video game that was really, really challenging. Like, if you didn't play on easy mode, it was a nightmare to kill people and take people down and kill the infected because it was very realistic on that front. It was not like The Walking Dead, where it seemed that every single cast member was the greatest shot of all time, and it just took away from it. So Ellie also takes the opportunity to again ask for a gun at the beginning of this journey, and since it's just the two of them, she says, and Joel says no. Then they head into a Cumberland Farms. Were you familiar with Cumberland Farms?
Is that the same as Randy Marsh's farm in South Park?
I think that's Tegrity Farms.
Tegrity Farms. Tegrity Farms is what I'm thinking about.
Tegrity. Yeah, I was personally unfamiliar with Cumberland Farms, but apparently there are convenience stores operating primarily in New England, New York, and Florida.
Okay, so this is a real shop.
Yes.
This is a real business.
Yeah, so a cool reference point for people that are familiar with it.
Yeah.
Joel has not been to this Cumberland Farms in a couple of years, but it's like one of his stash spots, right? So it takes him some time to find his stash, and while he's looking for it, Ellie sneaks down to an underground storage area through a hatch alone, because we needed something spooky to occur in this episode, I suppose. And she finds tampons, which is a huge win.
Big win.
Nice
Big
nod
dub.
to how valuable toiletries and such would be post-apocalypse. But she also finds an infected who was crushed by some kind of cave-in, one of the employees.
Yeah, and the infected says,
Yeah. Classic infected noises, Barrett. She pulls her switchblade and cuts open its head, a la Dr. Ibu Ratna.
Yeah,
in episode 2.
So the visual here is very interesting. They keep showing like when you cut the skin, like and you're under the infected. It's fucking gross, but it looks like it's basically like cotton strands, like cotton balls.
It's not human anymore.
It's nasty.
Yeah.
It's nasty.
Yeah, then she stabs it in the temple to put it out of its misery. But she it's kind of like a dark moment from Ellie where you're like,
Oh, most definitely.
you know what I mean? Like almost like a little kid killing rabbits in the woods, and you're like, that kid's going to be a serial killer.
She is enjoying, I mean, one, she's quick to realize that this infected is not going to be moving out of this pile of rubble. And kind of, there's like this element of like a crushed animal, like you said.
Yeah.
And she knows that it can't do anything and is kind of enjoying toying with it and seeing it up close a little bit. And then, yes, I think is somewhat agreeable to the idea of putting it out of its misery in a potentially twisted way. Now, it's an infected, so like,
it doesn't have feelings anymore.
Right.
Or I guess that's what it's supposed to get you to think about, right?
Maybe.
Like, does it matter?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not really human anymore, and it would kill her if it could. So
Sure.
To that end, it's like,
I agree, but that's definitely what they were like poking at and pulling at.
I'm totally
there.
with you that it was that was showing a side of Ellie.
And also just the irony that this little girl who could be the thing that eventually saves all these infected, right, with some kind of cure or whatever, putting one out of its misery, sort of. But she doesn't tell Joel about the infected at all.
No.
Doesn't mention it. And Joel decides to leave his big old rifle there in Cumberland Farms because apparently there's not much ammo out there for that thing, so it's mostly useless, as he puts it.
Yeah.
And again, here, Ellie asks if she can take it, if he's just going to leave it there, and Joel says no. They continue on their journey and pass a downed commercial aircraft, one of our 3 signs.
That's right.
That the apocalypse is occurring, Barrett.
Yeah.
Which is, they use the opportunity, again, here, to touch on things that we take for granted pre-apocalypse, like the magic of air travel. She's like, dude, you got to go up in the sky when he's bitching about you pay $12 to get shoved into a middle seat or whatever. Also, $12 felt like
is that what he said? $12?
I thought he said $12, which is like, damn, that's a really cheap ticket.
Well, keep in mind, the last time that he would have been flying was 2003. So
inflation.
Flights were definitely cheaper. They weren't $12 though. So.
Then Ellie and Joel get into how this pandemic started, and I'm just going to read you Joel's quote. He says, "No one knows for sure, but best guess, cordyceps mutated, and some of it got into the food supply, probably a basic ingredient, like flour or sugar. There are certain brands of food that are sold everywhere, all across the country, across the world. Bread, cereal, pancake mix. You eat enough of it, you'll get infected. So the tainted food all hits the store shelves around the same time. Thursday, people bought it, ate some Thursday night or Friday morning. Day goes on, they started to get sick. Afternoon, evening, they got worse. Then they started biting. Friday night, September 26, 2003. And by Monday, everything was gone." Ellie speculated that it might have been monkeys, which is, I thought that was like an interesting call to the COVID situation where people at first were like, it was the Chinese experimenting on monkeys. Like that was one of the theories that got floated.
Right. Yeah. Classic, like kind of a call to outbreak.
Yeah.
As well.
Yes.
And the hot zone.
The
hot zone. There was a lot of pandemic material out there starts with experimenting in labs on monkeys, whether it's in the U.S. or China or wherever else. Yeah.
Then Joel tries to keep Ellie from seeing some really dark shit by asking her to cut across the woods, but she refuses. And this is sort of where our flashback is queued up here. The duo sees a pile of bones, skulls, clothing, people who were clearly mass executed, like in this ditch. And Joel explains to her that the military was rounding people up in the small towns, like out of the major cities, right? And then relocating them in quarantine zones if there was enough room. And if there wasn't room, they were simply killed.
Yeah.
We see a very specific set of clothes that we are about to talk about seeing on a young mother and her baby in the opening of our flashback to September 30th, 2003, which we will dive into next. But first, we've got a new sponsor today, folks, so listen up. Today's episode is brought to you by Cured Nutrition. If you're like me and have trouble relaxing or getting to sleep, especially when you're stressed, like after watching an emotionally scarring episode of The Last of Us, then Cured Nutrition is here to help. When the world feels crazy and chaotic, remember that you don't have to. You deserve to take control of your mental and physical health. Cured Nutrition is trying to make it easier for you to do exactly that. Formulated with their trinity of ingredients, a blend of full-spectrum cannabinoids, functional mushrooms, and adaptogens, Serenity Gummies are your answer to finding the calm in every storm. Cured wants you to feel good about feeling good, so they took their time formulating their Serenity Gummies. They left out the artificial flavors, sugars, and dyes and replaced them with ingredients that actually live up to their clean label, wellnessy word. I've been taking their Serenity gummies every evening after work, and they are phenomenal, providing me with the calm and relaxation I need while keeping me productive and sharp. Also, for those of you who have trouble getting to sleep, their nightcap capsules, right here, I'm holding them in my hand. They're phenomenal. I've been taking them every night for a couple of weeks now, sleeping like a baby, which is huge because my wife is about to give birth to our baby any day now, and I need to be as rested as possible for that. So highly, highly recommend both the Serenity gummies and the nightcap capsules right now. Cured is extending an exclusive offer to the Clam Fam. You can grab a bag of Serenity gummies for 20% off by visiting curednutrition.com/dragon and using coupon code DRAGON at checkout. That's CURED nutrition.com/dragon and coupon code DRAGON at checkout to save 20%. Protect your peace. Pop a gummy. So back in 2003, Bill, played by Nick Offerman, is down in his survivalist bunker as the New World Order jackboot fucks, as he calls them, round people up, including that mother and baby whose clothing we saw in the pile, to be driven off and presumably executed, we know. Bill finds himself, after the military leaves, alone in this town. So he gets himself a boat. First move, got to grab a boat, Barrett.
Yes.
To attach to the back of his truck. He goes and loots a Home Depot. He turns on the gas to his house at some natural gas like compound.
Yeah.
He has himself a generator he sets up. I mean, this dude is the greatest doomsday prepper of all time.
He is.
The GOAT, the Michael Jordan of doomsday preppers.
Survivalist. And we just got to say that, like, there's no better. So apparently I read in an interview with the director that, like, Murray Bartlett was like first choice casting for Frank. And so they got him, and then they were, looking to cast Bill. And, like, I mean, Nick Offerman is just absolutely the perfect choice here because one of the reasons that he's able to play roles like this and like Ron Swanson even so well is because he is some of that.
He is that guy.
He is like a carpenter and like a survivalist or somewhat of a survivalist. I think that's an interest and a hobby for him, IRL.
Yeah.
And so
if you follow him on Instagram, you know this.
Yeah. Okay. So it's just he's a lot of fun to watch in these roles like this because I don't think he has to stretch too far. Although in this episode, he stretches quite a bit and he does an amazing job at it. And just an all around, by both Murray Bartlett and Nick Offerman, as we get into the story here, they smashed this, both awesome performances. But I loved watching him just like set up shop in this little town, raid the Home Depot, get the boat, like start setting up booby traps, and then just cooking and drinking when he drops the big box of the Camus Vineyards on the table, like you're like, yeah, he likes the good shit.
This guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah. So I'll really just, wonderful scene and I guess a bit of a montage here that we get. That I quite enjoyed.
Yeah, they're kind of showing us this whole setup. He's got the fences, he's got the booby traps, the security cameras. He's got a garden, though. He's also got a greenhouse. He's got chickens. Like, at first you're like, oh, this guy's an underground bunker psycho. Mm-hmm. Probably doesn't have a whole lot of culture or class to him. And then pretty immediately he kind of starts to flip that on its head, right? Because he's got the greenhouse, the chickens, a meat shed. He's like living the high life solo dolo out there. Like, he's really doing it.
And I think he, when he later has the conversation with Joel, like he's quick to make a distinction between a prepper
and a survivalist.
Which is what he is. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure all the doomsday preppers would prefer to be referred to as survivalists. But it's the same fucking thing.
Well, no, it's not.
The guy's down there in a bunker with 6 TVs and security cameras all over his house.
I think part of being a survivalist is a massive amount of preparation. But I think...
And skills, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that's the differentiation.
That's the difference, is that you can be a prepper and just be like stocking up and hoarding canned goods and guns and whatever else.
But this guy's got the skill set.
This dude knows how to, like you said, he knows gardening and he knows how to skin animals and clean them and cook, and he knows how to fix shit and build stuff, and like he's got all the skills, man.
This is the guy I need to get with when shit hits the fan.
100%.
Because I got none of this going on.
Yes.
I got none of this going on. I need to get gay with Bill so he'll save my ass, because I've got, like, as I'm watching it unfold, I'm like, oh shit, I can't do any of this. This is trouble for me. So at first, everyone's read on this dude Bill is like, oh, he's like the ultimate, like, macho man. He's played by Nick Offerman. It's Ron Swanson, right? Not so fast, my friend. We flash to 4 years later in 2007, where someone has fallen into one of Bill's traps. It's like a big old hole, presumably that was like covered in brush or something.
Right.
And as he approaches the hole, someone speaks out, "I'm not infected." And here he is. It's Murray Bartlett. the second half of our Bill and Frank duo, Frank himself, and thus begins the greatest love story ever told.
It's a good one.
It is. He's from the Baltimore QZ, and it's gone, he says. So there's some of these quarantine zones are not making it. They're not surviving, right? Yeah. Bill hits Frank with the infected scanner that he's got, which lights up green. And Frank talks Bill into letting him stay for a meal because he hasn't eaten in 2 days, even after Bill protests that if I feed you, then every bum you talk to is going to show up here looking for a free lunch, and this is not an Arby's.
That's right.
He says Arby's didn't have free lunch. It was a restaurant. And I noticed already Arby's in some location puts it on their... Oh, no, it was on Instagram. They put up an Instagram post where the signage outside says, it is a restaurant, or we are a restaurant, or whatever, and then there's like the green fungi growing all over the fucking sign. Now, the first big hint that we were about to get into a love story was when Bill goes to drop off clothes for Frank while Frank is showering, and Bill kind of awkwardly lingers in his room. And you're kind of trying to get a read for it. It's like, is it just because he hasn't been around a person in so long, or what is happening here? Is there some level of attraction? But we proceed. Bill serves Frank a gourmet meal, which again, Barrett, like you said, this dude, I mean, it's not just that he can cook. It's not like some basic shit. Like, he is making delicious food.
Absolutely delicious. Guy gets a A++ in plating.
Oh, God,
I would also add, you
Yeah.
know, this is, he must have been on the line at like a Michelin-starred restaurant or something once upon a time, because he has this down pat. He does a little plate turn to make sure it's all facing the right way. And then Ross, he knows to pair rabbit with a Beaujolais.
He does.
You know.
He does. The look of sheer joy on Frank's face when Bill sets down the meal, and like after his first bite, he's like, "What the fuck?" Yeah. He had like the fact that somebody could be out there living like this, right?
Right.
And to your point about the wine pairing, he says, "I know I don't seem the type," and Frank replies, "No. You do."
Yeah.
Like, he's already got the gaydar going, right? Like, he can tell.
Yeah.
After the meal, Frank says he'll be going now, but first he wants to play the piano, which is like this classic, again, like he's class, this Bill guy.
He's got culture, man.
Yeah. It's an antique piano. So Frank starts playing Long Time from the best of Linda Ronstadt.
Yeah.
Which is a song that I will never be able to hear without crying for the rest of my life. And Bill is kind of like disgusted with Frank's subpar piano playing, which is apparently an ironic show from Murray Bartlett, who is quite the piano player, according to HBO's official audio companion. Frank urges Bill to play it for him. Then he's like, "Well, then come on, you hop up here. Then let's see it. Then I'll leave. Play the song, then I'll leave." So Bill plays a heartbreaking rendition of Long Time for Frank, who seemingly, as you watch this unfold here, starts to immediately fall for Bill. Like, he's like, just the amount of emotion flowing in the scene is heavy. And he says, "So who's the girl? The girl you're singing about?" And Bill says, "There is no girl." And Frank goes, "I know." And then they start kissing, and we're off to the fucking races, literally. Frank tells Bill to go take a shower, then takes him to bed. And this is Bill's first gay experience, right? So Frank, he tells him, like, I did, a long time ago with a girl at some point. But Frank tells him he's going to start with the simple things. But before he does, he needs Bill to know he's not a whore, and he doesn't just go around sleeping with people for lunch. So if he's going to do this, he's going to stay for a few more days. And I thought that was a really funny way to kind of cue up this sexual experience between these two men. And then from there, we flash forward to 2010. There's a lot of time jumps in this episode. You really had to like stay on your heels. And we flash... Or toes, yeah.
Don't get knocked back on your heels with all the time jumps. You have to stay on your toes to keep up with them.
Thank you, Barrett. That's correct, yes. We flash forward to 2010. It's 3 years have passed, okay? So now Bill and Frank are fighting like a couple.
Yeah, they're a full-on couple. And they literally, I mean, if you thought being closed in with your significant other and spouse over the course of the pandemic was bad, they literally don't get to see anybody else. At all. They don't get to mask up and go spend an hour at the grocery store to get away.
Right,
They're not... They're not each in their separate spaces just dialing into Zoom calls. This is just 3 straight years of this being
Bill and Frank's world,
your only interaction. So
Yeah, and they're fighting because Frank wants to spruce up the whole neighborhood, right? Like the surrounding houses and such, and redo the boutique and whatnot. And Bill doesn't see the point. Frank tells Bill that they're going to have friends, to which Bill replies that they're never going to have friends because there are no friends to have, to which Frank replies that he's actually been talking to a nice woman on the radio. And the next thing you know, we're having like a lovely garden party with Bill and Frank and Tess and Joel.
Yeah.
And again, it was cool how we have this like siloed off story between these two, but also the characters that we've been familiar with through 2 episodes,
kind of intersect,
are tied into it. Bill keeps his pistol on the table the entire lunch, which is just fucking hilarious. And there was I'll say this, for such an emotional, gut wrenching episode, there was a lot of humor inserted, which I found to be very pleasing. Tess and Frank go inside the house to check it out, and they leave Bill and Joel alone, where Bill once again cocks his pistol, and Joel says a very important line. He says, "I understand if mine," he's about to say like if my girlfriend or if my wife or if my whatever, but he doesn't know what to call Tess, or he doesn't want to call her whatever he's going to call her, so he just says, if mine brought people into our situation, I wouldn't be happy either. And Bill says that he doesn't need Joel or Tess complicating their lives, that they're self-sufficient here, which is obviously true to a point, but right. Joel immediately points out like, hey, yeah, so about that, your fence has like a year left, tops, and I can get you 10 spools of aluminum fencing that'll allow you to keep your fence up for the rest of your lives. And almost implying like, I see very clearly that you guys are like romantic and I don't know, just making some kind of comment there, Joel was.
Well, I don't think it was, I don't think that they were hiding that.
Didn't seem to be, no.
But I think that, I mean, it was just it was just a pointed, I think it was what they were, it's what we circle back to at the very end of the episode, actually, which is that what they were seeing in each other, I think, was this idealism of like protecting those that you love,
being a protector,
yeah, and so
he's nodding to that.
It wasn't just one life; it was both of these lives were equally important. So
good point.
Yeah.
During the end of this visit, we find out Bill and Frank are actually the ones sending code music through the radio back to the Boston QZ. So it's not Joel's brother Tommy, as I was speculating. It's Bill and Frank, and we see Frank and Tess actually get into like the 80s music versus 70s music versus 60s in the background, while Joel is explaining to Bill that, look, you got a good spot here. Fedra is never going to come here. You're well protected from stray infected, but eventually raiders are going to come at night. They're going to come quiet. They're going to come armed. They're going to get through your fence. They're going to get through your booby traps, and it's something you need to be aware of, right? From that scene, we flash another 3 years forward to 2013, where we see Bill and Frank taking a jog, which is just hilarious because like Frank is in great shape and Bill is really struggling, like about to have a heart attack back there. Their fence has been massively fortified with like a big-ass pile of cars in front of it, and presumably the aluminum fencing that Joel was talking about trading.
So, you got to think so, yeah.
Frank takes Bill to a secret strawberry garden he planted, and he tells him, I traded Joel and Tess one of your guns for a packet of seeds. Another funny line here where Bill says, which gun? He's like, a little one. But Bill giggling like a schoolboy when he bites into the strawberry was another one of the best moments of this episode. Like,
really good.
This episode was about love, but it was also about appreciating all the little things that get lost in the shuffle of life, like the taste of a strawberry, right? Or the ability to fly on a commercial airliner, or before they start falling out of the sky. Bill has another beautiful line here where he tells Frank, he says, I'm sorry. Frank's like, for what? He's like, for getting old faster than you. Just aging more quickly than you are, whatever. And then he says, I was never afraid before you showed up. Which is just this huge hat tip to like when you're operating alone in the world, right, there's less to lose.
Yep.
It's just you.
Oh, yeah.
And the second you add love, the second you add another human being or multiple, the stakes get so much higher. And it's a whole different ball game. And I thought that this was where I broke, Barrett. This was where I started to break, where I was just like, oh God, the waterworks were queued up. So, and at first I was like stifling it. I was like, don't cry, man, you can do this. But like scene by scene, I was just like, what the fuck? But that night, like right after the strawberry scene, the raiders that Joel warned him about show up with like bolt cutters and guns, and there's like 15 dudes coming out of the woods here.
Yep.
Fortunately, our man has flamethrower booby traps. These guys are just getting lit up, literally, and like Frank wakes up in his bedroom. Bill's already outside shooting. Like by the time this guy's waking up, Frank sneaks outside. He finds Bill in the middle of the street, picking the raiders off like one by one with like a sniper rifle. I thought it was weird that he was just standing in the middle of the street. Like, get some cover,
weird.
guy.
Yeah, yeah.
What the hell? But yeah, and he's picking the raiders off, and then frankly, no pun intended, Frank distracts him into getting shot. Like him coming out there and being like, Bill, is like the reason Bill stops, turns around, and then takes a bullet to the side, right?
Yep.
And at this point, I don't even know if it was for her sake or mine, but I unintentionally lied to my wife, and I was like, everything's going to be okay. because I didn't realize how far we would stray from the video game. And I had played I had met Bill in the video game, okay?
Yep.
And I was like, no, Bill's going to make it. So I like, again, don't know if it was for her or for me, but I was like, everything's going to be okay. She was like, what? I didn't say anything. But then you've got Bill's bleeding on the table, and he repeatedly tells Frank, call Joel.
Yeah.
Call Joel. He'll take care of you. And again, I think it goes back to what you pointed out earlier. They had identified in each other this common thread.
Yep.
That they were both protectors, and he wanted another protector to come in and make sure that his boy was going to be okay. We go straight from the table to 10 years later. Big jump here. And it's 2023, right? We're back in present day where Frank is now sick. And
and it was this was kind of the first of I thought one of the small little twists, because you kind of fade to black with Bill having this,
bullet in his side,
wound.
Yeah.
And it certainly would not have been surprising to see Bill gone in this when we jump forward 10 years. And so to kind of twist it on us, and Bill is now healthy and fit again, and it's actually Frank that has taken a turn for the worst was kind of startling and definitely kind of emotionally jarring.
Yeah, you see Frank sitting out on the front porch, and at first you're like, oh man, it's just him now?
Yeah,
He's out there in like a wheelchair? Like, what the hell? And especially because of that line we had earlier where Bill says, like, I'm sorry for getting old.
Yep, exactly.
Faster than you.
Yeah, they definitely teed it up there with that one. Yeah.
Bastards. He really stuck the knife in and twisted it. So, according to co-showrunner Craig Mazin, Frank had either multiple sclerosis, right, MS, or early amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, AMS, but one of the two, and they're pretty similar in the effect that they have on human beings.
Okay, that's interesting.
My guess was MS.
Okay. I was not able to pick up on what it was supposed to be, so I was just considering it cancer, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't make much of a difference, right? They don't have a cure for these things.
But this makes, now that you say that makes more sense, because his mobility is severely restricted. He's not really able to walk or do anything physical. Right,
not even able to eat the delicious meals that Bill's making anymore, right? They've got him soup and a sippy cup at this point.
Yeah, and his paintings are kind of like, I mean, actually
Picasso-esque.
Quite an artful thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're not as, you can see some other ones that have been made previously, which are far more like detailed and kind of,
realistic,
within the lines and realistic. And so now his paintings are getting more abstract. And so that's a good note there as to what was ailing him. But yeah, they've clearly got no doctor and no cure. So it's the end of the road. It's terminal.
Yes, and it's 20 years from when we first met them, right? Yep. And they very much look it. Like they were able to age both of these gentlemen up quite a bit to make them really, really look like
you got to think that they're into their 70s at this point now, probably
something
20
like that.
Years down the road, because they were both middle aged when they meet.
Yes,
so.
Yeah. And as they go to bed that night, after we watch them eat this meal where Bill's still eating his, gourmet cooked food, and Frank's got his soup with the sippy cup, and they do have medicine for him to be taking, but you have to assume that it's pretty limited in whatever they were able to find at the pharmacy or whatnot.
Yeah, and also I figured that was probably another nod to their transactions with Joel and Tess, since we know that Joel has like this ability to get pills and medicines. And so what he's probably got is little more than like painkillers and opioids and like that type of thing, which also seems correct based on how they utilize the medicine later.
Yeah, yes, it does. And it's kind of a callback to that scene where Joel did that trade with the Fedra military guy, right? So as they go to bed that night, Frank doesn't seem quite right. And it turns out he stays up all night. He spends half the night getting over to his chair, and he stayed up all night watching Bill sleep, and he has decided this will be his last day. He's basically like that he wants to go out on his own terms, right?
Yeah.
With some level of dignity remaining. And he says, as they're kind of arguing about it on the couch, or he's in his chair, Bill's on the couch, there wasn't anything to cure this before the world fell apart. I've made up my mind. And he says, I'm not going to give you the every day was a wonderful gift from God speech. I've had a lot of bad days, and I've had bad days with you too, but I've had more good days with you than with anyone else. Just give me one more good day. And I thought this was also like, in TV and movies, they tend to way over romanticize this, right? And you would give that speech of every day with you was a wonderful gift from God. I got everything I needed from this life, that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
And this was such a more realistic
Totally.
tone for a scene like this, and I thought that was really impressive. And he wants Frank to make him some toast, then go to the boutique with him where he'll pick out outfits for them, and Bill has to wear what he asks, and then they'll get married. And then Bill will cook a delicious dinner, then crush up all these pills and put them in Frank's wine. He will drink it, and then he wants Bill to take him to their bed and Frank to be able to fall asleep in Bill's arms. And at this point, I was weeping so obnoxiously that I was like really having to like fight my tears, because I was trying at this like I was trying not to distract from the storytelling.
Right,
like I was like, all right, now I'm making this about me. But then they play the goddamn song from the end of Arrival. Did you notice it was the same song,
No,
man?
I did not notice that.
I was a puddle. This song should be banned from the airwaves. It's just like we watched all these different things that Frank had said he wanted to happen unfold. They get married at the piano. I thought it was like the inference was that Bill was the officiant, right? Like he would probably have had that skill set too, right?
Yes. He's a notary public.
Yeah, exactly. They get married at the piano where they first kind of fell in love. They have their last dinner with the same wine.
Same meal, same
Yep.
Yep.
Same bottle of wine from the day they met. Well, not the exact same bottle, but you know what I'm saying. Then after dinner, Bill brings out an after dinner bottle of wine, which I just thought was like another layer on top, right? Like it's not the same wine that they were drinking with their dinner. He goes and gets like an after dinner red and mixes Frank's pills into his glass. So Frank tosses his wine back, and then to Frank's surprise, Bill tosses his back. And like, you know, to the layman alcoholic out there, you probably didn't think much of it, right? But this is the whole thing with Bill. He's the classy guy. He would never chug a glass of wine unless he too had drugged it, right? So Frank realizes that he has already drugged the whole bottle. And Bill says, he's like, did you already put pills in the bottle? And he says, enough to kill a horse. He says, this isn't the tragic suicide at the end of the play. I'm old, I'm satisfied, and you were my purpose. And Frank says, I do not support this. I should be furious, but from an objective point of view, it's incredibly romantic. And they laugh together, and then Frank says, take me to bed. So Joel and Ellie arrive, and immediately Joel can tell something is off, as the flowers out front of Bill and Frank's place have died, and the door is unlocked. And, I'll say this, they're not dead. They're dying. I think they showed up to the house within like a couple of weeks of what we watched unfold, because the flowers are not completely toast, but it's like somebody hasn't watered them in a bit. The front door is unlocked. The candles are burned out. Their last meal is still on the table. And while there are some flies like starting to gather, there are not that many. Like, so I think this was like a very timely situation here, where it just so happened that within not that much time, these guys showed up and found them.
Why do you think they're not dead though?
Why do I think the flowers are not dead?
Oh, wait.
I'm saying the flowers, not Frank and Bill. The flowers out in front of their house. Like one of the last things we see Bill do is water this very specific pot of flowers.
Yeah, yes.
And then by the time Joel and Ellie are walking up, like the flowers are starting to wilt.
Yes,
but they're not dead, right?
Yeah. There were a lot of really. I mean, just the filmmaking here has been super top notch. This episode, most of all. And there are just a lot of little things like that where you just casually notice, you know, Bill watering those flowers on the last day or on the second to last day with Frank while he's painting. And so it's like, it's just a little mental, they just put it in your mind, right? As a little mental note. It doesn't seem important other than that they're caretakers, right? That they that they did spruce up the place over 20 years, and now they've got gardens and plants, and they're taking care of the flowers, and it's pretty. And so as soon as Joel and Ellie walk up, and you see those flowers have died a little bit and have started to wilt, it's just an automatic tip off, and really cleverly done. But yeah, I think you're right. I think this is within a week or two.
A reasonable amount of time there. Yeah,
this happened probably fairly recently, I think.
Place still looks solid, right? The neighborhood still looks pretty good. And remember, they had after that little argument we saw them have, 20 years ago or whatever, or I guess 16 years ago. I don't want to have to do the math. But Frank had gone and made the whole neighborhood is nice. He'd gotten gasoline for the lawnmower and cut all the other lawns. He had put the boutique back together. I mean, they really had their own little world here, these two. So Joel comes inside the house. He finds their bedroom is locked. Ellie finds Bill's suicide letter, which on the front of the envelope it says, to whomever, but probably Joel. And I will note, with the letter, this is one of the ways they really paid homage to the video game version of Bill. They added in the he, and that is Bill in the video game. This is one of the last things I played on the video game was getting to Bill's place. So I had some context here. And the letter came with a key to his truck, right? It's got the Chevy key with it or whatever. And Ellie reads the letter dated August 29th, 2023. Well, I guess they give us a direct date, so we could compare that with where we are, if I could recall. But we'll let the audience do it for us. Somebody listening, tweet it at us, at Barrett Dudley, at WR Bolin. Let us know where we're at in terms of time passed between Bill and Frank's last night.
Yeah, isn't it September?
I want to say yeah.
Don't they? Do they pop up as a September thing?
I think so. So
essentially confirming that it's a month or less.
Yeah. There you go. Ellie reads the letter to Joel. It says, I used to hate the world and I was happy when everyone died, but I was wrong because there was one person worth saving. That's what I did. I saved him. Then I protected him. That's why men like you and me are here. We have a job to do. And God help any motherfuckers who stand in our way. I leave you all of my weapons and equipment. Use them to keep. And obviously, Ellie can't even bring herself to read Tess's name. Joel takes the letter from her and steps outside to finish reading it. And this is the closest thing he can. This is as close as he can come to crying. Joel, I thought, he couldn't do it in front of her. Goes out front, reads it, kind of gathers himself, right. And he heads out to the truck, which has no battery in it, but he rigs up a battery with stuff from the fridge. He opens the hood of the truck and he's like, God damn it. There's literally, you can see the spot. Even me, who doesn't know shit about fuck, there's no battery right there. But then he goes over to the fridge, he opens it up and there's the battery lid and then sulfur.
Yeah.
And I guess he was able to, again, not a mechanical guy, would be dead as hell when the apocalypse happens. But again, he is able to rig up a battery there. So Joel comes back inside, and first thing he does is make Ellie show him her arm. Just to confirm one more time, right?
Yep.
Okay, this is real. And then he tells Ellie that he has a brother out in Wyoming, and he's heading out there to find him because he's in some kind of trouble, that he used to be a Firefly, and he might be able to tell them where this lab is that Ellie needs to get to. So Joel gives Ellie some ground rules for their journey, including never bring up Tess, ever. Then they head down to the bunker to get supplies, where once again, Joel denies her a gun. When she's like, there's a wall of them. He's like, no. They both take showers, right? That was one of the, again, the simple pleasures that you take for granted, right? Taking a shower, the way Frank enjoyed his shower when he first got there.
5 more minutes.
5 more minutes, please. Oh, God.
Morning.
Hell yeah. Yeah, with the alarm and in the shower. Just 5 more minutes, please. Yeah. Ellie stumbles across, at this point, while Joel's finishing up, getting dressed after his shower. She stumbles across the pistol that Frank grabbed on the night they were raided. It's just, I happen to notice it's the same one, same drawer.
Yes.
And
Yep.
she stashes it in her backpack without Joel knowing. So she finally has a gun here, all right? She snuck it, and he has no idea. They then get in Bill's truck, and they head out to find Tommy in Wyoming. And Ellie, thinking that a car is the coolest thing ever, is just another one of those things we take for granted moments, where she's fascinated by the rearview mirror.
It's like a spaceship.
Yeah.
It's like a piece of shit S10 or whatever, but it'll get us there. Yeah, the I thought the test thing was interesting. It Joel is such like a stone-faced guy, willing himself to to be extremely stoic and like not let a lot in or out, and be as emotionless as possible. He clearly had like a very deep attachment to Tess. I think was kind of one of the that's one thing that we learned over the course of this episode, right? Is like because the previous one didn't really give us a whole lot about their relationship or how deep it was, just that they lived together and were partners of some sort to some
Yeah, the only
extent.
clue we got was her climbing into bed with him, right?
Yeah, right. But now it's like we really saw that, well, they've been together for almost 20 years at this point, and this was somebody super meaningful. And so this was another extremely difficult death that like just continues to make this guy harder and rockier and more jaded. And like, it'll be interesting for me to see just kind of like, is it something that he ever kind of can he ever kind of let that wall down and show anything more or let anything else in? Can he let Ellie in? Or, is his role simply to like bottle this all up, push it all down, and just be like the badass,
The protector.
the protector?
Yeah.
And that's it, and it's kind of like either could work for the purposes of the story and the show, but you're kind of rooting for him to like,
Have some human in him?
Yes, yeah, to be to let it out a little bit. So, I thought that was kind of interesting. My note from the final couple minutes here is, did you get the sense that they didn't take enough from this place? Like, this place is stocked up. This is the one spot on this journey where it seems like you can find anything.
Yeah.
And like maybe they just didn't bother kind of showing us that. And like the back of the truck does look like it's got a bunch of shit in it. But I would have been like,
Every single
loading
gun.
up a couple suitcases and like all the ammo and like you gotta even if you don't get to take it, even if the truck breaks down in 500 miles or whatever, and you gotta bail on some of it. It's like, well, put it in the car.
Make a stash spot or whatever, right?
I don't know.
My read on this was that it was intentional because this way, like we complained, or I complained last week when they're leaving the old town hall.
Yeah, they don't.
And I was like, why didn't you
stock
grab
up on like grenades and shit?
You guys didn't want any of the grenades or anything? Like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
And my read here, especially because Joel's like, he takes her down, Ellie down to the bunker, and they're clearly getting supplies.
Mm-hmm.
My read was that they don't want to show us exactly how much they got because that way we don't really know, like moving forward, right? Like we don't know what he's got back there, what he grabbed out of Bill and Frank's place that might come into play further down the line.
Right.
And, but yeah, I mean, it was,
that's true.
It was like one of my questions about why Bill he like hooked that boat up to the back of his truck and then was driving around with the truck and the boat. And I was like, what's he going to do with the boat? But I think it was just for storage, just so he could fit more stuff.
I think that's right, because one of the things we see him do is like throw the seats out of the boat.
Yes, and then he puts the big gas tanks in the boat in the back.
So I think it is basically just like a hauling mechanism. It's
right,
basically the trailer.
like a trailer. Yes,
yeah, right. But is that a holdover from the game? Does Bill drive around with a truck with a boat attached to the back of it?
I want to say yes. I don't remember, but it felt so specific.
It could be a very fun. I could see that being like a funny game visual,
little hat tip,
basically.
Yeah,
and it being kind of a hat tip. But
remind me of Grand Theft Auto, though.
Yeah. But yeah, I just this was such a brilliant decision made from Craig Mazin and the showrunners to like take this opportunity to do this bottle episode, to stray from the storytelling of the game. And it's like this, if beyond how enjoyable and emotional and well executed this episode was, it also just like on the, on from a high level was just like, man, this show really is in the hands of some unbelievable creators. Whew. Because like this was also a scary decision to make, I'm sure.
Dude, this was a huge swing to take.
Yes.
Like a massive risk. Especially
so,
after the first two episodes, like you and I have talked about, they didn't stray from the game almost at all.
Right.
I mean, very few decisions, and they kind of talk about that in the after the episode too.
But yeah, I just feel like this is it made me super confident going forward. The show's been renewed for season 2. We were just talking on text message a little bit earlier today, like how many seasons this might go, and it sounds like it's probably going to go 3 minimum now, and it might go 4, could go 5 if there's apparently a rumored third game that could come out. And man, as long as Craig Mazin is behind it, it's like you got to feel pretty comfortable with it. And I'm just really like, yeah, this episode was so good, and it was just like it made me feel really, really positive about the show moving forward.
So as they drive out of Lincoln, Linda Ronstadt's long time plays on the tape that Ellie popped in, and shockingly, Joel asks her to leave it. He's like, no, this is good. This is good stuff here. Yeah. And then we fade from a view of them driving off out of the compound back through the window that Bill and Frank left open so their rotting corpses wouldn't stink up the house. And it was just beautifully done, man. Yeah. And to your point, like when I watching the opening credits, I was like, oh, Craig Mazin wrote this one, and some guy named Hoare directed it that I've never heard of. When it finished, I was like, oh, Craig Mazin is one of the best living television writers currently. Yeah. Like, this was unbelievable. It took the whole show to another level. Totally. It was great through 2 episodes. They had done such a good job really sticking with the game and not straying too much from it. And then as Neil Druckmann, the game's creator, said in the inside the episode or after the episode, that basically it sounds like they threw a whole bunch of ideas at him. They were like, here's all of the options. And that he only picked diverting from the game when it made the story better. And you could almost see it in his face as he was saying that, like, this was a no-brainer. Yeah. Like, I read this, and he even said on Twitter, it's one of the best scripts he's ever read, period. And I don't know what that means exactly, because I'm not sure how many scripts Druckmann has read. But, I mean, it really was just unbelievable storytelling in a bottleneck episode that kind of makes the world even bigger, that really gives us, it just like, it's, when they kept talking about this show and what they wanted to accomplish with it, they kept bringing up like these human elements that I was not really seeing in the first 2 episodes, not so much, right? About love and about friendship and compassion and life, and like, first 2 episodes, I mean, you're really just dealing with the fundamentals of the apocalypse and what's going on in this place now, right? But then this one really opened up another layer where it was beautiful, man. It was so unexpected. Did not see that coming from a million miles away. Like, at no point, I'll tell you, like, when I heard Murray Bartlett got cast as Frank, I was like, I wonder, like, there was like in the back of my mind, I was like, I wonder if they're gonna do like a gay love story, but never like even close enough to the front of my mind to bring it up, right? But it's just because like Murray Bartlett, I had just seen him in The White Lotus season 1, and the second it started unfolding, I was like, oh, wow, they're really doing this. Yeah, they're really going to go there. Like, they're really taking, and like I said, this was such a risk to do this, to divert as far as they did 3 episodes in, and to make episode 3 as big of a bottleneck as this was. And it could not have gone better. I've never seen so many people on Twitter at the same time being like, well, I'm fucking crying. I mean, seriously, a shitload of people it was insane. The reaction from this episode on Twitter was like overwhelming. They killed it, and every single person who watched it felt that way.
One of the things that's difficult about video game adaptations, right? And that I think you started or at least me, but I think maybe a general audience as well started kind of seeing in episode 2 is like, look, a video game is, and I know Last of Us is somewhat of an exception to this, but not all the way. Video games are very objective based, right?
Yep.
You have a mission to do. You have a puzzle to solve. You have a place to get, somebody to protect, and people to kill. For the most part, that's how a lot of this shit works, right? Like, and I'm generalizing here, but so that doesn't leave a ton of room for emotion and character development and story building and all that. Now, obviously, Last of Us did that to a better degree than almost any other video game that had preceded it. But to be able to pull a strand out like this, which apparently, another thing that I didn't totally understand, this did exist a little bit in the game. The Bill and Frank are partners romantically in the video game as well. It's not, now they don't delve into it in the depth that they do for this episode, obviously.
Yeah, it's sort of implied.
But it's implied, and I thought that was also just a cool thing, because this is no secret. You think of like the gamer community, and it's not really a place where like there's a lot of room for LGBTQ, allyship.
Yeah, like gamers will admit that to you.
Yeah,
it is the most toxically masculine community that exists.
So, one, it's cool that Last of Us inserts that in the story in the first place. One thing, well, let me just say, I kind of minor spoiled something for myself, but there's another character in this world that is basically the biggest LGBTQ gaming icon ever. So I'll just leave that one floating out there for you.
It's Joel.
But then to put this story in, and have this story in the game is already kind of a step forward in pushing the envelope. And so to then expand on it like this in such a beautiful and romantic way, I think we have to mention that part of the risk is that gamers and fandoms in general, whether it's for actual video games or for just stuff like Star Wars and Game of Thrones.
Dude, you just saw what happened with Lord of the Rings. They made some dwarves and some hobbits black, and people lost their fucking minds.
Right, and so people get upset about this type of stuff within these communities, and it can be pretty toxic. And so for them to go here was a huge risk, but I think very, very, very confidently we can say it was a total success and paid off and gave us just so much more life to root for here, it
depth, man. Much more depth.
And it showed this small portion of what something could be like in a post-apocalyptic world. What kind of hope there would be to live for? What kind of, what kind of human just elements of life would still survive, right?
Yeah, and I mean, also,
it was really cool to see.
I think important to note, HBO historically has done a better job of including stories like this that touch on more than just your mainstream straight cis relationships or whatever, than any other network. Bar none. Even look back to The Sopranos.
Yeah.
They went way out of their way to make this storyline with what was it, Vito?
Yeah, I'm not sure that that's the best one
It's
to
not,
draw up.
but that was their right. That almost that was the first draft of what occurred here, right? That did not pan out exactly like I think you would have wanted it to.
Right. But they
in terms of representation, right?
Yeah.
But they've always tried to go for it. They've always included stories that are outside of just your mainstream, what everybody will approve of stuff. And this was the best iteration of it that they've put forth yet. Where, I mean, again, I can't say enough about Craig Mazin. This was beautifully written, and you can't say enough about Offerman and Murray Bartlett's performances here. That was ridiculous. I tweeted this, but they got to give, can they split an Emmy? They'll both be nominated. I fucking guarantee it.
Yeah,
but can they both win? Because they deserve. Both of them deserve it. The way they played off of each other, the way they both had their individual roles, it was just, it was magnificent, and it was gripping. It was emotionally tumultuous. It was heartbreaking in the end.
It was, and we joked about this with Tess last episode. But I keep seeing these names: Anna Torv, Nick Offerman, Murray Bartlett, and you kind of expect these characters to be
long-standing,
at least have a several episode arc, and we are just, they're just gone after one or two episodes here, and that's also pretty interesting.
It was cool that we got Anna Torv immediately, though, right? We did get a little bit of her here. We had a few minutes of her.
That's true.
At the lunch or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And I was curious whether or not they would sort of do callbacks that showed us more of her and Joel's relationship, and this was definitely a piece of that.
Yeah.
But this all in all, look, like I said, I've really enjoyed this show so far, but last night's episode, it really elevated it in a way that now I'm like, oh, we could be dealing with one of the best television shows ever made. And I know that sounds to some of you like I might be being hyperbolic. I'm not. That was ridiculous, man.
I want this show to take risks. You know what I mean?
Well, they're clearly going to.
Because there are so many opportunities. It is post-apocalyptic. It does deal with zombies. It is a pandemic show. All these things that we've seen done a lot of times before.
Yes.
So I want it to take big swings like this to really differentiate itself, set itself apart, show us what it can do. And and flowers to Craig Mazin, because this was a great first big swing.
Yeah, he's going to win stuff for this too. I'll also note, Neil Druckmann tweeted, why is everybody crying? This was the happy episode. And I was like, oh my God, I hope he's kidding. We should also note on the way out, Annie Wershing, who played or did the voice acting for Tess in the video game, sort of coincidentally, I don't want to use that word here, but she passed away yesterday after a battle with cancer. And I could tell that not only Neil Druckmann, but a lot of the cast members were affected by that, and that was a really big sort of sad deal for them on the same day that one of the saddest episodes of TV I've ever seen air came out was just sort of the coincidence part of it to me. But yeah, R.I.P. to Annie Wershing, voice of Tess from the video games. And yeah, that's a bummer, but something that we definitely needed to note here. Barrett and I will be back later this week on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles. Go and pick a tier to support the show. We do additional and exclusive ad-free episodes each week, further digesting each episode of The Last of Us, driven by hotline calls from our listeners. That's also where when you sign up, you immediately gain access to our entire backlog of ad-free premium content on Patreon, including a companion podcast for every single episode of The Sopranos, where Barrett and I did, I think it was 83 separate podcasts. 86, somewhere in the 80s, for the entire Sopranos series. If you want to hear us talk about how Vito's storyline was a good effort, but not the best in terms of LGBTQ plus representation.
In some areas.
Yeah, it did. Yeah. But we loved The Sopranos. Barrett was a first-timer. I was a rewatcher. It's friendly to both, whether you're rewatching The Sopranos or have never seen it before. All of the White Lotus Season 2 bonus coverage and House of the Dragon Season 1 bonus coverage is also housed on patreon.com/oysters, clams, cockles. Join today, support our show, and get yourself some more OCC. Go to bolinmedia.com/shop to grab yourself some OCC merch, including our Oyster Clamco hats, which are flying off the shelves like hotcakes, Barrett.
Gotta get ready for Succession.
Season 4.
Just a couple months here, less than a couple months.
It's coming up.
And just regarding Patreon, shouts to everybody. We had an awesome Patreon episode last week. It was just really like a great example of what we do over there. If you need more encouragement to go check it out and join. And to everybody that is already there, thank you for calling and getting those hotline calls in and asking good questions and giving us such good prompts. I'm looking forward to this Thursday's, obviously. But yeah, really, the content over there is humming. So if you haven't checked us out, please go do that and support the show.
I renamed the tiers. It is the clicker click.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to remember the other one. Damn it. But the other one is the one you can use to call in and when you join the $10 tier.
The Mushroom Mob?
No, I went with Fungus Family at first, and then I ended up changing it. I'm pulling it up right now, so it'll just take me a second. But the other tier is the one where you get the hotline number when you sign up, you get Discord access when you sign up, and you can get in there and... Bloater Brigade.
Which one's the higher? Which one's our $10 tier?
The clickers are lower down the scale,
okay,
so that's the lower. That's the $5 tier.
If you want to be a bloater, if you want to be a big, swole, nasty-looking bloater, that can call into the hotline
and join the Discord,
that's the one.
That's the Bloater Brigade, Barrett.
Okay.
But yes, we got phenomenal calls last week. It really allows us to talk about things like hypotheticals outside of just what we're seeing on the screen as well. Like which one of Barrett and I would thrive better in an apocalyptic situation like this, and if we could pick one other television show character to take with us in our crew to try to survive, who would it be, and stuff like that. And the Bloater Brigade, as it is now called, did a phenomenal job last week calling in and providing us with a lot of discussion points. So looking forward to this week's as well. Follow us on social media. We are on TikTok at Oysters, Clams, and Cockles, approaching 25,000 followers this week, folks. We're on Instagram at Oysters, Clams, Cockles, and on Twitter at Clams and Cockles. Follow Mr. Barrett Dudley at Barrett Dudley on Twitter and Instagram. My Twitter and Instagram is at WR Bolin. Video of today's episode was produced by Cade Orris, and you can watch in full. If you've never watched, we implore you, please tune in on youtube.com/at Oysters, Clams, Cockles and watch a full episode. We got this whole new set for y'all to enjoy with 3 cameras pointed at Barrett and I at all times while we're recording, and edited by Cade Orris after the fact for your enjoyment. Until next time, Clam Fam, if you're lost in the darkness, look for the light.